Hello and welcome to today's tutorial where we'll be continuing with our flyer assignment for part 3. This week we'll be adding text and the finishing touches to the flyer. Everything you need for this assignment will be found on Brightspace. Under week 7 for October 20th, here you will find our PDF lecture from today, a PDF of our flyer assignment sheet, and the folder where you will be uploading your finished assignment. Let's review the assignment sheet for today. So as mentioned before, we'll be working on part 3 of our A5 assignment. This assignment will be due next week, just before class on October 27th. Introduction. We are now ready to add the text to our flyers. As we learned in today's lecture, there are lots of different aspects we need to remember when adding type. These aspects change depending on the product you are designing. The number one goal when it comes to type is to remember to keep it legible. The assignment. The purpose of this assignment is to add the finishing touches. We will be adding the remainder of the type, including the name of product, description, price, and SKU. Make sure you pay attention to the legibility and maintain the continuity. Our objectives. Learn how to manipulate characters, keep consistent text sizes, one text per product, update the images and placement. So as we reviewed last week, here are our specs. Our first 3 sections are all specs that should have been completed before now. So the first 2 sections were our first week when we created our layout. And last week, even though this section looked small, there was quite a bit of work to make sure we close cropped all of our images. Please note I've added a new YouTube video where I close crop all of the images at once, and that way if you have any questions, if you want to go back and review, there's a full video detailing how to close crop each image. This week, we are adding information for our text. So we have our product header, our pricing, product description, and SKU, each with important information. Our product header has a type font. Please note that in our branding, our type font we used was Arial. This will be important to make sure you continue with that font throughout this assignment. You'll need to ensure that the header is bold and at 20-point text. For the pricing, we'll be using marker felt font. If your computer does not have marker felt font, feel free to use a Comic Sans or something equivalent. Marker felt should be standard on all Mac computers. That font size will need to be 40 points, and we'll be adding some superscript as we discussed in today's lecture. Next, we have the product description. We have a type font, once again, that same Arial font, 10-point, and we'll be adding something today which is kind of neat for InDesign called placeholder text. Lastly, our SKU text will be the type font once again, but it will be oblique or italic. Whichever one that font comes with, that's the one we'll use. And it needs to be 8-point. So to be submitted today, so you're submitting your compressed main folder. So once again, we're still working out of that same main folder that we've been working with all along. Export to PDF with all printers, marks, and bleeds. So once again, we're exporting it completely separate PDF with our marks and bleeds turned on. Be sure the subject line is a proper naming convention, has the proper naming convention. Working file, AMCA A5 flyer, and we're changing it to 3. With our last name, our package folder will also say 3, so this will be your 3rd package folder in the main file. We aren't adding any more files this week to the supplied folder, but you should have our social media icons, the raw downloaded hardware images, and now your completed close-cropped images as well. Here's our criteria for marking this week. Once again, some pretty heavy points for our product header, price type, description type, and SKU type. Here's an example of what we're looking for today. And lastly, here is the example of what our finished flyer should start to look like. So we'll be adding this text for all images. Take a moment and notice that some of these images have slightly moved. That's okay. The goal is a customer is always going to be changing their mind, always going to be changing what they want. So we roll with the punches. We adapt and we adjust. Nothing's final until the customer says it's good to go to print. Let's get started. So as usual, in our NSCC folder, semester 1 print, there's all of our assignments from the semester so far in our A5, where we have our flyer 1 package folder with the PDF with the marks and bleeds. We have our flyer 2 package folder, once again with the PDF with the marks and bleeds with the updates. So let's go to our flyer 2 package folder and we're going to open our InDesign file. Sometimes you're going to have these issues. Sometimes I've found with this newest update of Creative Cloud, if I'm having a font error, I can exit out and I open that InDesign file again and it works. Not quite sure. There's definitely seems to be a glitch with Creative Cloud, and I'm sure we're all finding more than one. So here I've placed all of our images. Make sure all of your links are still firmly intact. If you have any yellow triangles or red question marks, go to your link panel, as you may need to double click and find where you've saved your file. So, as indicated on our assignment sheet, we must make sure that we use one text box per product. This is going to be very important for moving things around and making it easier. So what I'm going to start with is a text box. So we're going to use our type tool over on the left hand side and I'm going to draw a box. I'm now going to type the information. So we have a product header. I'll zoom in so we can kind of see this side of it. So we have a product header. We have our price. And now is our interesting part that design has. So for a magazine editor or somebody doing the InDesign layout for a magazine, they may not have the final copy of the article that a writer would be doing. So they need something to kind of know how it's going to look, know what to place, and sometimes it can help find a word count so the writer has the parameters they need to make it work. So while you are in your text box, next to your cursor, if you right-click on your mouse, there's an option called Fill with Placeholder Text. So this text is a bunch of gibberish that looks like it's a paragraph in words and nonsense is what it is, but it looks legit. So by filling in the placeholder text, it just kind of makes it look right. But as you note, a bunch of gibberish. So with this gibberish, you can kind of manipulate it however you want. We only need a couple lines of text, so I'll cut it off where I want to. It looks rough from there, but when you back up too far, it looks like a paragraph. If you'd like to come up with your own description, you're more than welcome to do so. It's just not a requirement. And lastly, at the bottom of our description text, we need our SKU. Once again, it can be made up of any numbers that you want. So if we look to the right for our assignment sheet, it says product header. We need to be our type font, bold, and 20 points. So all within this one text box, I'm going to select our product header. From there, I'm going to type in our Arial font. It gives you so many options, but there's our Arial bold. You can check Arial Arial bold. There's the different options. And we're changing our type to 20 point. So now we have our header. Next we move on to our pricing. So our pricing says marker felt font. Like I said, if you don't have it, use something else that it looks along the lines. And we're changing it to 40 point. So I'll type in marker font, either one, thin or wide, whatever you want to do, have at it. And then we'll change the type size to 40 points. So underneath it says superscript. So if you don't see it, there's likely 3 dots here in the bottom corner of our character palette. When you select those 3 dots, it gives you more options, including a all caps, small caps, superscript, subscript, underline, and strike through. We'll be focusing on superscript today. So we have our dollar amount, and I'm going to add our cents. And if I select those 2 zeros and hit superscript, they automatically go up into the proper place. Normally this would be a problem. I'll show you how to do it. If it's too much, you can take some time to let it go. So if you select that first top line, and if you go over here to our leading criteria, and you can increase the leading, which will help give space between the line. So that is something we discussed in today's lecture as well. However, our description text also needs more updating. So product description, type font, 10 point, placeholder text. So we've already inserted the placeholder text. I'll select the type font. Whoops. So it doesn't mention anything about being bold. So I assume that's regular. If you notice, when I change the font, I have a bit of a leading issue here. You go back to auto and adjust the whole paragraph, to which I can adjust the final line. However, I noticed that the size changed as well. So we'll lower that down to 10 point. Now that this is the correct size, the correct shape, we can increase the leading to increase the space. This can also be done with our other fonts. You can go down and kind of mess around with it. Like I said, not necessary. If you're feeling adventurous, go for it. Otherwise, no pressure. Lastly, we'll update our skew text. So it's our type font, once again, oblique and italics, to 8 point. So we'll go to Arial, and we're going to pick italic. Some fonts will say oblique, some that are usually more traditional for a PC will say italic. Now we change the font size down to 8 point. This doesn't need to be overly visible to the customer. If anyone who's worked in retail, you know it's pretty important. When a customer comes in with a flyer, the skew is what will help identify it or search it in your inventory. As far as a flyer goes, it just needs to be barely legible. So now we have created our text. So with this mock-up, I'm now going to take it and place it in each spot that matches our flyer design. So I see that there's one up here for the chandelier. I'm going to adjust it to the box, copy, paste, and I'm just going to place that back down. So there's lots of different ways: edit, copy, edit, paste. My favorite way is to take it and hold the Alt key, and you see how there's a little white arrow that shows up underneath our main cursor. If you click and drag that header, it'll create a copy as well. So there's all different pieces that we can do to get the job done. You can hold the Shift key and select multiples, and hold that Alt key. So, as you see, we can't have our text being cut off by our images, but we can kind of play around with them. So if we go up to our chandelier, we'll change the title to chandelier. And this is when Sia starts playing through my head. And we'll change the price. I'll let you have fun with the price. You can match what I've done, or you can change it to whatever you'd like. Here we're having issues with the letting again, so like I said, if it becomes an issue, just don't worry about it. I'm gonna kind of play with our type here, let it fall around the chandelier. No pressure. So this time we're just kind of gonna finesse it a little bit, make it look a little bit more appealing. Use that W key on your keyboard to remove all the extra lines. The OCD in me must change it even though so there, this section is complete. So if we move on to our faucet, and we'll adjust it. Look, that text is over the way, except one side. Upside the placeholder text. And just end it wherever I want. Have fun with this part. It's technical. It's nothing overly special. But at the end of the day, it's all about how it looks. We'll get to those guys later. Guess there wasn't much point in me adjusting it to the box ahead of time. So the biggest thing is I'm not changing the size of anything. I'm playing around with the boxes, but I'm not changing the size of my text or the price or the description tool. All of that is staying consistent and helping with our continuity. So this is where it gets fun. So if you look on the right side, you'll notice I've kind of moved them around our images. It happens, customers change things. So make sure you're adjusting with them as well. However, like I said, remove some of the words. Make sure you keep the rest of the spacing and pieces the same. So if you notice with this guy, the hammer is now facing in a new direction. So if you select the box of your hammer and you go to Object, Transform, you have a couple of different options. You can move it, scale it, rotate, shear, rotate it 90 degrees, or there's also these options to flip it. So if I flip it horizontally, now the hammer's in the opposite direction. Gives me a little bit more space down here for my box. We've also flipped our measuring tape, so we'll go to Object, Transform, flip horizontally, move it to a different corner. The biggest part, we're not changing the text size, keeping all the continuity that we can, so that it keeps it professional. However, it's still a flyer. It still gets printed once a week and then, like most things, thrown out. Oops. No, I'm just getting picky. It's fine. So many different ways. By the way, if you hit Command 0, you can go back to your main view. We'll hit that W key. The only thing missing now is the colored text for the price. So going back, hitting our W key, I'll use our text tool. I'm going to select the type that I want to change. Go to Fill. I'm going to change this to our orange Pantone. I'm going to add a stroke, except I want it to be a black stroke at half a point. Because this is not on your assignment sheet, this is up to you. If you're at the point that you're frustrated and you're done, leave it with the black marker text, leave it all black. that's not a problem. If you want to take it to the extra level and add the different colors, you're welcome to do so as well. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to change all of them. I could have, if instead of copying, pasting, I could have changed this one, copy and pasted it down, then change this one and copy and pasted it down. There are options, but this way you make sure you're doing it correct. It gives you kind of extra practice the more you repeat something. So take your time. It's not overly, it's repetitive, it's tedious, it's making sure it's correct, and a lot of the times that's what the technical side of designs are, whether it's a graphic designer submitted a file to a print shop or the customer got their niece or nephew to do something up for you in paint. Sometimes it just gets down to the nitty-gritty of being technical and being technically strong in these programs to be able to figure out a broken file, to be able to figure out what needs to be done, and at the end of the day, making it look good when it comes off the press. So if I go back, I'll hit my W preview key, and this looks like it matches. So this is what we're looking for. Pretty basic, one pager. There's one more step we'll be working on next week, but that's next week's problem. Hope this isn't too bad, so we'll finish up by saving it. So I'm File, Save As, and I'm saving it as Flyer 3. And I'm saving it, well, I can save this one right to my desktop. This is the redundant InDesign file. And now I'll go File, Package. So when I package this file, this one goes into my main folder. So I'm saving my third package folder. There you go. And now we export a second PDF. So this is a separate PDF for our Flyer 3. And what's important about this PDF, we have all of our printer's marks and we ensure that our bleed is selected. Now we can hit export. So once we have that piece, this is what your main folder should look like now. AMCA A5 last name, and we have our Flyer 1 package folder, Flyer 1 PDF, Flyer, well 3 because alphabetical order, but Flyer 2 packaged, Flyer 2 PDF, Flyer 3 packaged, Flyer 3 PDF. And then in our supplied now, we will find our social media icons. These are the raw, unedited images that you would have downloaded last week. And these are the completed files that are all sent to PSD. Hope they all layered on top of each other. So all of these ones are my working files. And that's it. So you'll take that main folder, compress. It's gonna take a second. These are big files. Very slow. So you have your compressed. We head over to our Brightspace upload. This is the teacher section, so I can't, but you'll upload your compressed folder as usual with all of the pieces, and then we will be done for this week and headed into next week. Hope you have a good one, and we will see you next time.